fearful yet overjoyed. This is the description for Mary Magdalene in the Gospel today. The Gospel speaks about the resurrection and appearance of Jesus. Actually, every single Gospel in this octave of Easter does so. Jesus' tomb was placed in a garden. And so these appearance accounts, these coming to the tomb, all happen within a garden. And behind me you see the beautiful flowers that are now in our church. We downsized a bit this year, but I'm still hoping that by the time we get back into Mass, that we can finish up a final finale with all kinds of flowers and really take ourselves out with a great bang and show for the Easter season. People, you parishioners, oftentimes donate these flowers in memory of loved ones who have passed. I assume it's particularly hard in this time of isolation, during this time of Easter, to grapple with the loss of a loved one. But I really ask you to look at that reality along with the reality of Jesus' resurrection and begin to say, what does this all mean? To ponder these mysteries. Really, for all of us, it's helpful to think more and more about the resurrection. What does it mean? You see Mary Magdalene, the apostles, others who encounter Christ. Was it a bigger deal back then because it was new and fresh? But isn't it the same? That the fact that Jesus rose from the dead changes everything for you and for me. It really is as powerful an event now as it was back then. So as we continue just to live out these days, today is Easter Monday, tomorrow Easter Tuesday, every day of this octave, an Easter day. I invite you to dive deeper into this resurrection. Today the Gospel speaks about this whole sense of the guards were being paid off so that they wouldn't say that Jesus rose from the dead. It was a fact. It was known. Do you believe? Do you understand? And what does it all mean? Anyway, it'll be good to journey with you in this time. We're gonna, I think anyway, we should have another series so we can start that up in the days ahead. What that will be, though, will leave you with a little anticipation. It's so great to be with you and continue to journey with you in these vlogs. We'll now continue in this time of retreat for those of you who are staying on. God bless. To encounter the risen Lord. That's what this week is all about. Each and every gospel is going to hone us into this encounter with Jesus, risen from the dead. Let us pay attention to those characters, to those who encounter the Lord, to these various principles, so to speak, so that we too can put ourselves in a place of encounter. Let us first look at the simple but obvious reality that we need to be around Jesus. Prayer is a means for us to do so. Just like we find that the people around Jesus encountered him in different ways during his earthly ministry, so too we must pray. At the beginning of this retreat, I spoke about taking a half hour of meditative contemplative prayer every single day. How have you been doing in that? This, I think, is absolutely crucial, to have this consistent time each and every day. The Lord knows it and you know it, and it's your time together. The journey for most of us seems to be this, that we might jump into something like that, jump into committing to a half hour, and then we begin to wane from our commitment to it and stop doing it. Then we start again. There comes a time to where we become more and more consistent. As we do so, we notice that it's just when the there's upheaval in our life, that this is going on or that's going on. Sometimes for a week, sometimes just a day that we miss out on our prayer. But the next stage from that is to begin to realize that prayer is really the center of our life, and that we begin to never, ever miss. This is really what we're looking for. This is what I'm asking of you in your whole life, really, to find the treasures of being with the Lord in this type of way. So I just encourage you, if you need a restart, just take a reset and to commit yourself to praying with the Lord in that half hour every day. Another thing to keep in mind if we're going to encounter the Lord is to belong to Jesus. To really be His. This is maybe somewhat of a general comment, but think of Jesus and how He appeared to many people after He had risen from the dead. But there's not a one that I can think of other than maybe the guards as He broke free from the tomb that didn't necessarily believe in Him, that didn't belong to Him, that weren't His disciples. He appeared to those whom He loved, who followed Him and who belonged to Him, so to speak. There are so many beautiful passages, I think particularly in John's Gospel. Take John 14, for example. The beginning of that chapter speaks about how Jesus says, I go to prepare a place for you. He's speaking to those who belong to Him. Let us truly belong to Him. And whatever that might mean, maybe it means kind of reshifting some of our ideas and attitudes. But let us belong to the Lord, because that is a way that we can encounter Him. One last point I want to make is that when our lives make no sense without Jesus, I think this can be an opportunity to encounter the Lord. In this case, I used the example of Mary Magdalene. Saint Mary Magdalene, just this great woman of faith who had this wonderful, awesome conversion. And she was madly in love with the Lord. She was there at the foot of the cross with Him. She comes to the tomb. She has no idea how she's going to live her life without Jesus. Her grief is so intense that she doesn't even recognize the Lord. Not right away, anyway. How about you? What is your desire for the Lord? Does your life make any sense without Jesus? May our passion for Him grow all the more. As we do so, it'll give us opportunity, I think, to encounter Him. So these are a few ways I think we learn from Scripture of how to encounter the Lord. I had spoke before about ways in which we listen to the Lord and we can perceive Him. Because one thing is to put ourselves in a place to be found by God, for Him to come to us. But it's also important, obviously, to hear Him and listen to Him. So maybe I'll just quickly repeat that. So to remember that the Lord can come into our mind, put certain words into our head. He can speak to us, to be present to that voice. The Lord can stir our emotions. These can be slight, and when we recognize these, even if they're slight, by paying attention and opening ourselves up to the Lord in those moments, those feelings can grow in intensity. So be paying attention to our emotions, our feelings, especially in the movements of them, how they shift from one to another. In our imagination, right, as we just invoke our imagination in prayer, such as in these passages ahead of encounters with the Lord. What happens with us? What goes on within our hearts? What burns inside us on the road to Emmaus, the disciples, as they were encountering Jesus? And yet it was not until Jesus really revealed Himself that they realized, that's what it was. That's what it was in our hearts. So we too must be open, and our imagination is a beautiful way to do just that. And then also in our desires and longings for the Lord, just like we maybe see in Mary Magdalene. How do we desire Him? What begins to stir up within us, and the Lord Himself can stir up desires that plunge us forward, knowing this is what the Lord wants to give me because He's given me even the gift of a desire for it. I do pray that you will encounter Him in whatever the way the Lord wants to. Maybe it's very still. Maybe you hardly even notice it. Maybe it's extremely profound. But stick to your prayer. Be open to the movements of the Lord within you, and then respond to them through repetitions and through being attentive. The Lord wants to work great things in you, and I'm so excited to spend time during this Easter week with you in retreat. The scripture passages for today are Matthew 28, 8 through 15, Matthew 28, 8 through 15, and then tomorrow it's John 20, 11 through 18. It's one of Mary Magdalene, John 20, 11 through 18. Have a great retreat day.